Hello guys, Michael here on another Valheim guide. Today we're going to be taking a look at the different damage types and what they mean in Valheim. So in Valheim there's not just damage, there's different damage types, and the three main damage types is blunt, slash and pierce damage, and each weapon type will be assigned to one of these three main damage types. Now there is a couple of exceptions, which is dagger and certain weapons in the game, but generally they'll be assigned to one of these three damage types. Now you can actually see what type of damage your weapon does. If you hover over it in your inventory, it's going to come up with a little tooltip section, and where it says the damage, which on this iron mace for example you can actually see it says blunt, that's what type of damage it's going to do. So why is knowing the different damage types actually important in Valheim? Some of the creatures and monsters in Valheim are going to be resistant and vulnerable to certain types of damage. So to be as efficient as possible, you want to make sure that the damage type you're using is the best for that situation that you're in. Now there is actually secondary damage types in Valheim as well. You've got fire, frost, poison and spirit. Now these are secondary damage types because there will always be a main damage type directly linked with the secondary damage type. So on this bow for instance, we've got the first main damage type is pierce and the secondary damage type is poison. Secondary damage types are going to be again the same as the main damage type, where some of the creatures are going to be resistant to it, some are going to be neutral, and then some are actually going to be vulnerable to it. But the secondary damage types are much more specialised than the main damage types. So how do you tell the damage type you're using is effective or not effective versus the monster you're fighting? So in combat in Valheim, when you deal damage, it's going to come up with some numbers on the screen that tell you how much damage you're doing. Damage numbers are going to come up on screen. They're going to be a certain colour. They're going to be grey, white or yellow. If they're grey, the damage type you're using is weak and you'll be doing less damage overall. If they are white, they're going to be doing normal damage and they're not going to be affected. And if they're yellow, the damage type you're using is going to be strong versus that creature, and you're going to be doing more damage, and you're going to be critically hitting as well, and overall you're just going to kill the monster quicker. So I've got an example here of a creature in Valheim that's going to be resistant and vulnerable to certain types of damage, which is the skeleton. So the skeleton is vulnerable to blunt damage, which this iron mace is perfect for dishing out. It's going to be neutral to slash damage, which is the likes of swords, and then it's going to be resistant to pierce damage, which is the likes of spears. So all the different weapon types in Valheim, what are their damage types? So for slash damage we got one and two-handed axes, swords, and half of the damage of knives is going to be slash damage. For pierce damage we got spears, polearms and bows, and then again half of the knife damage will be pierce damage, and then for blunt we got one-handed and two-handed clubs. So like I said earlier in the video, if you want to know what damage type the weapon you're using is, just hover over it in your inventory and it will come up with a little tooltip section which is going to tell you what type of damage it does. So a bit more information on the secondary damage types. So poison, spirit and fire are all going to be damage over time effects, which means when you put it on an enemy, it's every 1 second it's going to be ticking for a certain amount of damage, and that's going to stay on the creature for a certain duration. And frost is going to be a chunk of damage, and it's going to make the enemy's movement really slow, and it's going to freeze them in place just for a small duration of time. So thank you guys for watching. If there's any other guides that you'd like to see, please leave it in a comment below and leave a like on the video. Thank you.